Hey, thanks for joining, Olga. Here we are on this next topic, the great debate of data quality versus data observability at the Data Stack Summit here. Along with me, I have Olga Maydanchik, AVP, Metadata Architecture, Enterprise Data Management, Voya Financials. Olga, I've been working with you. You are full of tremendous knowledge. And I'm glad to be with you and give us some introduction to the audience as well.
Hi, my name is Olga Maydanchik, and I've been practitioner and educator in the area of data quality for as long as I remember. I started doing data quality somewhere in the 90s when it was a swear word and no one was even there to admit that they have data quality problems. Now, the things have changed. We have wonderful vendors. We have a very good methodology, but it's still, we have data quality problems. So let's start.
So that goes with my introduction of like you're full of wisdom and knowledge, starting from the 90s when most of the people didn't even do anything about data quality until recently. For folks who didn't know about me, myself, Raj Joseph, founder CEO of DQ Labs, a modern data quality platform. Let's get started. I think the topic here is there is lots of hypes, buzz, different words at different points of times, and there is a new product every time I see in the marketplace that's happening. But one important topic that I think we need to clarify for the practitioner and for the buyers in the space, and to do some justice to the world of data quality is there is this two notions in the industry. One from an engineering mindset, which I will be representing today, more from a data engineering mindset of how we can measure, monitor quality. And then there's other aspect of like, okay, the great that data is there, but it doesn't help for the business, which Olga, you will be taking the chair on that with your expertise on the business side. The great debate of data quality versus observability, which is better? Is it going to be useful here or not? Or is it the engineering mindset that takes over the business mindset is what we will be talking. So just to start with that, my case, Olga, is like always like anything that we need to be doing, if we do it very early on in the life cycle as where we are producing the data, and if we can catch it, then it's more better because then it's not going all the way to the downstream. So as a data engineer in my world, I kind of feel like everything needs to be upstream. Everything needs to be automated. Everything needs to be in the pipeline. More of this shift left approach, in introducing some of those concepts of observability in terms of observing the stack and automatically alerting, all makes a lot of sense. But I would like to hear from your side, is that good enough, or is that just because we are measuring on the data engineering world? Do you think that that's good enough from a business standpoint? What's your take on that?
Yeah. So often when we are talking about doing the pipeline observability, you are observing the data when they are transmitted between two systems from one place to another. And it could be different ways of transmitting old DTL, and it could be streaming or it could be whatever. It doesn't really matter. The thing is, you are transmitting only snippets of information. You are transmitting only partial view of something. So for example, in the world of employee, right? Like you are maybe transmitting the change of address, but at the same time, you have the whole history of when employee worked, how he worked, how much he got paid for his job, who was his manager, what was his position, etc. All this information is not transmitted in that particular snippet. So the problem is, even if you monitor this snippet of the information, you can't monitor how it fits with the information that's already there in some kind of a data storage. So while it's wonderful and it could be done, however, it's just not enough.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. But like, I also think like, yeah, we can do all those checks, but if the data doesn't even make to the tables or the warehouse, then doing all this later point of checks does not necessarily help. So do you kind of see that in your ways of like there is a aspect of maybe not necessarily all business checks, maybe some kind of data reliability checks that we need to do still on the earlier upstream cycle of it?
Absolutely. And actually, the way how I would do it, I would start with the assessment of the warehouse, right? And let's say I find errors. Then the trick is to classify those errors into different buckets, because errors are not random. Errors are usually created by some kind of faulty systemic processes. So the chances are, if you have one error, you probably have the whole group of errors of the same kind that had exactly the same problem. So what you do, you assess the error on your data store, warehouse, or whatever, operational data store, doesn't really matter, right? Classify them. And then you could kind of pick up, okay, this error group was caused by such and such situation within the pipeline. So, because not all errors caused, within the pipeline. And then when you try to put your data observability, you actually hit those errors that that they already happened with this. So you're not like randomly chasing for errors or randomly thinking, oh, what could have happened to those files? You are actually very deliberate about what exactly you are checking for. So those particular situations you need to verify. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and one thing I always seen is like the growth in data, and this is one of the reasons why I kind of feel like it needs to go more upstream, because the amount of data is more, and it's also growing faster. And we, as a data engineer, my responsibility is to give you the data, make it available for the business as part of the data contracts or SLA, SLEs. And I see that as a responsibility of myself in that the traditional ways of data quality, like measuring via dimensions and things like that, even though it can be built with a purpose in terms of measurement, is kind of a little bit slower in that aspect. I mean, it takes time, just like the whole stewardship or the governance. It takes a while and a longer time. I can also sometimes feel like the data quality dimension tracking measurements towards and the purpose that needs to be built along with that measurement takes a little bit of a thought and methodology along with it, and therefore it's kind of a little bit slower. So I kind of feel like, okay, with the amount of growing data, everything changing so dynamically, you also need a more of a faster automated way. And that's why I kind of feel like some of those data engineering principles and observability metrics can be really heavily used for the speed of automation. Do you have a different viewpoint on that when you look from a perspective of it?
I do not have a different view, and I am absolutely agreeing with you with the fact that we have to automate things as much as possible. We have to use machine learning techniques as much as possible. However, at the end of the day, the goal of data quality management is not detect errors. The goal of data quality management is to correct errors. So what I am observing right now in the current observability tools, and by the way, this is one of the greatest inventions that the vendors finally started doing something about it. But what I'm observing that you as a person who, let's say, hired to look over the data quality within the pipelines, right? And you're just getting overwhelmed because amount of data rules that the tool could produce for you, we are talking about thousands. So there are pages and pages and pages and pages. So what my biggest disagreement is not that we don't have to create that. We have to create actually much more targeted reporting and much more targeted classification of all those problems that machine learning is, giving us. That's I think the largest problem. The second problem actually that I see that the rules that currently machine learning rules generate, they are way too simple. They are talking about, now, not now, or something like that, maybe like format. etc. So I think we need to get somewhere where the rules could be created by machine when we are comparing two fields within the same file, or maybe comparing two fields across different files. So one of the largest issues that I've seen, like in every organization, is the problem of foreign keys. When there are two files coming, right, and there is, let's say, transactions of some kind of a customer, but then the other file is the list of customer, and this customer is not on this list. So all of a sudden, we have orphan transactions. So if the data observability tools would be able to compare those files, and not necessarily the files that came, within simultaneously, but maybe like the files, let's compare the files for today, or maybe like for the last week or something like that, and try to find all the issues up there, then we could probably have less rules created on the data warehouse side and just do a little bit more upstream. But for that, the rules need to be a little bit more sophisticated than they are right now.
I kind of see your point. I mean, because like I think most of the checks that we do on an observability is more nulls, formats, or even volume duplicates, data distribution, but not necessarily joining tables. And your point is very valid, because as a business, it's not just like one table or one column you're talking. You are like cross joining multiple tables and looking at more from a KPI, or even from a process aspect of it, which definitely requires more complex SQLs and things like that. And and then also, like just because we are sending alerts doesn't mean it really helps the problem. It actually creates too much noise, I kind of hear that it sometimes can become overwhelming to find the signal versus actually resolving. So okay, so if I hear you right, like there is some level of automation that can aid today, but not necessarily to the extent of what is needed from a business in terms of this automation and observability metrics is your viewpoint. Am I right?
Absolutely. Also, even when we get to the point of automation, or get to the point when the tools will be able to create much more sophisticated rules, it's still, the data could be not fit for particular use. So let me explain you. Let's say you have a data set and you have yearly annual salary for employees, right? That's good enough to do certain analysis. However, in order for you to analyze, let's say, I don't know how much money people are monthly put into 401ks, or how much health insurance have, etc. You need to have exactly the granularity of the biweekly payments or something like that. So the data could be correct, but still they could not fit for use, for particular use, because they could be over wrong granularity, or it could be like way too summarized and you need more details, etc. So you still need some kind of a profiling of the data sets that you're planning to use, just to check that you can use for whatever you're planning to do with those data.
Got it. And then like the one thing always puzzles me. I mean, of course, you hit on a great point. Just because the data is there doesn't mean it's fit for use. The most frustrating problem I have seen me in the life of a data engineer is what business wants changes every time. I have heard like some of my business peers saying like, okay, the great data, what you gave is great yesterday. And then tomorrow when we go back to work, they say like, oh, what you gave yesterday does not work. We need more of those things. And I don't know if you're, and that's what I'm like, okay, this is a constant moment in terms of expectations. And then, yeah, I can build some observabilities and automation and etc. But like, how do I even enable automation and if things are changing so drastically? that's where I'm kind of like, it doesn't help. And I have to go back into thinking more in terms of using data as a way to find out all those ways of unknown issues, alerting, and giving this information. Do you have any thoughts on that in terms of how do we keep up with the constant shift in business expectations, and then also bringing it back to some layer of engineering and automation of sort?
That's where the data stewards come in. Those are the people who actually bridge between business and technology, because as a technologist, people simply can't keep up with what is needed. That's a job of a data steward, absolutely. The other thing is just to detect all those possible problems, right? Upstream. You have to create the processes of what you are planning to do with the things that you find wrong. So in a sense, you're saying, hey, if we're finding this type of errors, we could still proceed. But maybe we'll proceed and we will mark them somehow. Hey, take a little bit of attention when you're going to use this data. Or sometimes you say, no, that's a full stop. We can't even load this file. Because by the time we get to that, it will be propagated to 10 other different systems. Or you could say, hey, we could do something else or whatever. We need to adjust our monitoring algorithms that monitor whatever the ML rules that the tool is supplying. So that's, again, to me, is a data steward job. And again, it doesn't really matter how you call the person, but there got to be a person who will be responsible of the situation. What are we going to do when the tool will detect it? Because otherwise you'll just keep detecting, and if no one loses, looking at those results, if no one uses those results, all you are using, you're just wasting money, like literally, without doing anything useful. So
no, I think that's good. And in my vocabulary, data steward is a very bad word. You cannot clarify, because I think it's kind of has the same connotation like data governance. I mean, nobody wants to say data governance because it's it feels like bad or but I think you said it right in a way, it's not what you call, but there is this one person who needs to bridge the gap, because else it's very hard to do that. But I mean, this is where it's kind of a little bit very tough for me to think the way you are doing, because we have this concept of decentralizing ownership, meaning moving away from centralized governance, centralized quality stewardship, and moving into newer topics like data products, data mesh, and all this stuff. All it says is that the domain needs to be given to the experts, and it can be decentralized and all this stuff. What's your view on that? I mean, do you still see, even in those kind of architectures and things like that, a place for a data steward or someone who is responsible for the business?
Absolutely. But instead of the central data stewards, you will have your data stewards and your data governance within your domain, right? So each product will have its own domain, which is actually going to be much easier for everyone, because one of the things that was hard to do when you're building data lakes or some other consolidated storages, that they are built by IT who don't understand the data. That's why creating data quality rules are extremely, extremely hard. Even if you hire data stewards or data governance people, the new people within the organization who don't know this particular data cannot come up with good rules, no matter how hard they try. They will come, and start doing, hey, not now, this is the amount should be done, but it's still going to produce a lot of noise. So literally only people who are dealing with the data day in and day out, they are the ones who tell you. Actually, I could tell you a story.
Sure.
Some 20 years ago, I was doing data cleansing for data that were used to calculate pension. And it was a fairly difficult actuarial formula, which takes into account your whole employment history and then like the 5 years of your pay and then put some other things in it. So you literally had to do a very clean data in many different domains, let's say payment domains or the employment statuses domains, etc. And in order to calculate it, and every time I would find an error, I would just kind of look at this and see how could it be like possible. Then I would call a person who would actually, her job would be to calculate those things manually every time someone would call the call center and, you know, ask them to go ahead and just do something. And she said, oh, yeah, we know that because 3 systems joined, and when they joined, this record got dropped and everything. So you know what? While it's not entirely correct, this is our acceptable practices, and this is what we do. So this is what I'm saying. Person knows the data. It doesn't really matter. She could just look at something and say, yeah, it's correct because you know this is done because of such and such. Data stewards can't do that. Only the people who work with the data, I'd say. Yeah.
I mean, we engineers think if we automate it, the knowledge lives in the systems and not in people's head. And therefore, it's kind of like the same problem in the data catalog industry where someone, I mean, that is what is intended to solve. But again, there is so many other things that goes along with it. For example, if you take the knowledge from the head and put it into the system, then you are not dependent on that one person. Is there an aspect of that at all in data stewardship? And that is kind of the engineering you said in a way, like, why do we need to be depending on that one person? It's so frustrating. Why can't it be in the system, that same knowledge?
Here's what I say. I think it's a wonderful idea to take the knowledge out of person's head and record it somewhere. So I already kind of like said that we have to have a little bit better reporting capabilities just to look at those observability metrics. So one of the possible situations how we could gather this knowledge is to create reports that are in line with the way how business thinks about data. Let me give you an example. So let's say in insurance company, you are measuring, calculating risk for, you know, some kind of a catastrophic event that could happen. And depending on this risk, you need to put aside some money, right? So in case of this event happens, then you have to pay people. Now you have a whole file that gets some kind of an underlying data, and you observe it and you create the metrics. Here is the problem. No one looks at the whole file. Usually all the data, all such things, all insurance policies, they are divided into portfolios. And then portfolio manager looks at the data. So what I'm trying to say that when you look that, let's say your observability metric shows something incorrect, it's not enough to know that. You need to know in which portfolio those things happen, right? So you probably don't need to monitor the whole file, but you already need to monitor those metrics by certain issues, whether it's like by company LOBs or by different product, or as I said, different portfolios. So this is the knowledge that business have, how they look at the data, how they classify and divide them. So if in addition to those observability metrics, we could capture the way how business look at that, then I think that the data engineer could produce something more meaningful.
Yeah, and I think the toughest part of what I have seen is business expectations changes. Like example, COVID, like I mean, digital transformation, and the time business expectation changes, and the time we get that, there is still a lot of time gap between that, and it's not as fast as it could be. And I think that in itself can create some challenges around that. And I think that's why we have some of the solutions like data SLAs, or even data contracts is all trying to do in some form or fashion to make this bias versus or business versus engineering mindset come together in a meaningful way. But this example of insurance and the pension really enlightens me in lots of different ways. And I just want to reiterate some of the things that we talked about from both sides. I think I think we are kind of agreeing in a way that there needs to be some check at the engineering level from a data reliability standpoint. But then, however, there is still a big gap from a business expectations that cannot be done today, could be done in future, but not yet. And so therefore, this concept of where both engineering mindset and business mindset needs to come together in a way that it's meaningful, where we can check data reliability early on through automated, and then later on using data stewards or some concepts is very critical, is what I hear. Would you agree with that, Olga, based on what you said?
Absolutely. Yeah, we need to have both processes. And for the process of early data quality monitoring, we just need to have a little bit better reporting to separate the signal from the noise. And the signal from the noise need to be separated through the lens of a business. They have to see, it's not like how many records or whatever, you have to see whether it's portfolios or whether those are, employees of this division versus employee of the other division, etc. You cannot, as an engineer, you cannot come up because you are not a mind reader. You just have to ask. So.
That's a good point. I know we are getting close to time. Maybe we may have 1 or 2 minutes. I know you are full of knowledge and wisdom, and you have been in this industry for a long while. So what would you say as things that we all need to be looking and doing based on your years of practicing and experience?
Yeah, in data quality?
Yeah, or
yes.
combining, or both combining observability, data quality, and
I think we need to keep working on creating more sophisticated rules for data observability. Like that's basically vendors and engineers what they need to do. Oh, by the way, you don't have to use a vendor software, right? You could put together those observability metrics yourself by using any kind of statistical packages, exactly, right? So I think that's a great area, and we started, and we just need to dig deeper. Then we need to work on the figuring out how can we report it and how we could create those flexible reports based on your notes that the business view is shifting all the time, right? So you have to have it. It shouldn't be static reports. It should be something more kind of like stable. But then without business involvement through the data steward or direct business involvement, I don't think we will go anywhere far in data quality management. To me, still the business is the one who knows what the data are for and how the data should look like.
All right, those are very great 3 points to finish. One on expand the horizon of our observability into more sophistication of rules from a business mindset standpoint, and then 2, just because you are detecting and sending alerts doesn't mean really you are adding value. You're actually creating more noise. So an ability to disturb, extract signal from those noises would be more meaningful. And then 3, and that could be only done with the business involvement. So that collaboration is much more critical and foundational for any kind of data quality stewardship or observability along with that whole equation of sort. It was a pleasure. I am glad we kind of agree upon that both sides needs to be done and both sides needs to improve and come together. So that's a sweet place to end. And hopefully our audience also got something of that sort. Thank you so much, Olga. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Appreciate your presence here and giving some knowledge back to all of us.
Thank you for inviting me in this wonderful conversation.
Bye-bye.
Bye.